Hey, welcome back to Pianist Academy and our walkthrough of the Hanon-Faber new Virtuoso book. Today we're going to be taking a look at the beginning of set 2, which is about rotation. This is one of my favorite concepts to teach, and the 2 pages that we're covering today are fantastic for both introducing the idea of forearm or wrist rotation, and also for practicing and learning exactly what healthy rotation feels like so we can apply it later to repertoire. Even if you don't already own this book, I still think you'll find this video helpful, and if you do want to grab a copy, I've left a link down below in the description. Now, as we've done in the past, this video is going to be divided into 2 parts. In the first part, we're going to slowly talk through the idea of rotation, what it is, why it's important. We're going to go over the 4 exercises over pages 20 and 21 in this book. And I'm also going to give you an extra preparatory exercise that I developed based on these pages, but it has really helped my own in-person students understand rotation much more, especially right at the beginning of their journey into this concept. And in the second part, I'm going to play through all 4 exercises on these pages in 6 different tempi. I'll give you 2 beginner, 2 intermediate, and 2 advanced, and you can feel free to use these to practice along with me at a tempo that works best for you. But also remember that speed is not the goal with these exercises. It's much more important to learn the motions and the gestures and execute them well, rather than just fast. All right, let's dive in. If we open up to page 20 and 21 and we look right at the top of the page, this says, use rotation. And it's got a little asterisk there. And this is great because before we go any further, it says, see the technique glossary on page 64. So we're gonna flip all the way to the last page of the book. And here it says rotation. There's quite actually a long paragraph definition of what rotation is. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to highlight a couple important parts. Rotation, according to this book, is a pivot of the forearm as if turning a key, also called forearm rotation, because the forearm is really what's rotating up here. I've also heard it called wrist rotation, even though it's not generated from the wrist only down. We see the biggest byproduct of this rotation in the wrist. Okay, so rotation is either toward the outside of the hand. The outside of the hand is the pinky side, the 5th finger side. It's either toward the outside of the hand, like that, or toward the thumb side, the inside of the hand. And there's actually some great terminology here. Supination and pronation. So this is supination, going toward the outside of the hand. This is pronation, going toward the thumb side. Those are medical terms, but they're really important for talking about rotation. And as you do more and more of this, you might talk about rotating in a supinated way or a pronated way, or we might just say rotate toward the 5th finger or toward the thumb. Those both mean the same thing. Now, why is rotation important? We're going to start by just reading a little bit more of this definition because it does such a great job of explaining a bit of that to us. So rotation, it says, this provides a stored energy which not only releases to play the next key, but also rebounds to play another key on return. 2 or more notes are played with minimal expenditure of energy and without tension. Oh, there's so much stuff in there. So when we rotate, if we're on the keyboard, some fingers, they're moved away from the keys. They're not, let's say, lifted away from the keys. Yes, they're just moved away. And we can rotate heavily toward the 5th finger side, and we can rotate a little bit toward the thumb side, right? Whenever we play the piano, what we're trying to do is use energy in the most efficient way possible. So we can generate energy by moving away from keys, and we can generate force then by releasing that energy into a key. So for example, if I were to rotate toward the 5th finger and then play the thumb on a C, I can generate quite a bit of force with almost no effort at all. Much more force than I could generate with almost no effort if I just used fingers. If I played with the finger down, you hear how much softer that is. If I try to approximate that same amount of energy but use rotation instead, there's much more, right? It also gets us out of the habit of needing to lift the fingers off the keys or lift them at least so far in order to generate that energy, right? The further we are away from something, let's say if we drop using arm weight or something like that, if we drop into a key, or or drop into a chord, the further away we drop from, the more energy we generate, especially if we simply allow the hands to free fall with gravity, right? The closer we are, the harder it is to do that same thing. We haven't stored kinetic energy by raising the hands and allowing them to drop. So what rotation is doing is allowing us to build kinetic energy repeatedly over the course of a phrase, over the course of a piece, and continue to release over and over and over and over again without causing any tension in the playing mechanism, without causing any other problems in the playing mechanism, without causing us to clench up or grab for notes, without causing us to lift the fingers too high, which can cause carpal tunnel and tendinitis and other issues, right? So we can generate all of that power in a really healthy way and in a really efficient way. Now, I do want to make 2 more notes here before we jump back to the actual exercises. The first thing, this paragraph says a pivot of the forearm as if turning a key. And that's a lovely analogy. I like that. But you can also think about it as if turning a doorknob. And that's usually the one that I teach, turning a doorknob, because it keeps the hand open, keeps the fingers open. When we play at the keyboard, the hand is open. It's not closed, holding something like a key that we turn like this, but it's open. And so if it's open here, and it's open here, and it's open when we grab a doorknob and turn it, okay, so we can see that that is maybe even more closely aligned with what rotation feels like if we turn with the fingers open rather than grasping something and turning with the fingers closed. Yes? And the second thing that I wanted to point out is that rotation is employed by the technique of great concert pianists and great artists all over the place. There are going to be very, very few, if any, today that don't use rotation as a part of their technique. But you don't always see it. It's not always very obvious where it's happening. And that is because as a technique becomes more and more developed, the motions required to execute it and execute it efficiently can become smaller and smaller. And as you play and as you learn to play greater and greater repertoire and more demanding repertoire, we simply don't have as much time to do large motions. And so we take a technique, and a technique that we probably have to start off by exaggerating, which is what we're going to do today. We take that exaggerated technique, and over time, as we learn it, we pare it down to be more and more and more efficient. So if you watch a concert artist play something, they might only be doing 1 millimeter or 2 of wrist rotation or forearm rotation like this as they play. And at speed, that's going to be almost invisible, but it's still there and it's still helping them a tremendous amount. What we're going to start with today is a much bigger idea of what rotation is, just so we can get it incorporated into our playing mechanism, into our body, and know what it feels like. And over time, we'll minimize that gesture. We'll minimize that according to the needs of our repertoire and according to the needs of whatever else that we're playing. Okay, let's jump back over to page 20 and let's take a look. The first exercise, exercise A. We have a handful of notes here. We're going to just look at the very, very first bar. That's all we need to really introduce what this technique is. And I'm going to play this and also read along the description at the top of the page. So we play with 1 and 5. Now the description says toss to accented fingers 3 and 2 and 1. And that toss is meant for you to feel that in order to toss the hand, the fingers have to be away from the key surface. So we can actually toss them. Yes? It says keep finger 5 close to the key and swing back with 3 and 2 for the toss. So what I'm actually going to do right away is give you my little preparatory exercise, because this is the very, very first place that I see students have trouble with this. And we might work on this for a bit. And there is never enough rotation incorporated. It's almost all fingers. And just an accented finger gets played instead of a nice big rotation into the third finger and the second finger. So here's a little bit of a change. Instead of playing and releasing the fifth finger as we move to the next, we're going to play 5 and we're going to hold it down. And then keep holding it and notice how far I've rotated. I've rotated almost to this tip, to the side of the tip of the 5th finger. Yes? So from that point, we're going to hold 5, rotate toward 3, rotate toward 2, back, and 1. So this whole time, 5 is acting like an anchor for us. It's keeping us on the key, and we're pivoting on 5. And we can really feel when we have that physical connection, we can feel how the hand can pivot around the 5th finger as it holds. Yes? So you could even start by just playing the 5th finger and rotate back toward the thumb side. And can we keep that key depressed while we do this? Notice, in order to do that, I can't be pushing down too hard. That'll prohibit the rotation. So can we keep the key down? And go back and forth with the hand. Then secondarily, can we play 3rd finger? Oh, whoops, let's try that again. Keep the 5th finger down, play 3rd finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger. So we can do this in the context of this measure. Keep 5 down, 3, 2, 1. And when we play with 1, 5 can release. Now, if we were to link this to the rest of the exercise, you could go through every one of these bars in exercise A and just don't repeat the attack of the 5th finger. What's really the most important thing that we're feeling is a great and exaggerated rotation toward the 5th finger. Now, in practicality, we are never going to rotate that far into 5, highly unlikely. But we need to make sure that we can do it. We need to make sure that we exaggerate, because if we don't, what's going to end up happening is we're not going to feel much of any rotation. We're just going to end up playing with fingers. And that's completely the opposite of the point of this exercise, right? Let's look at exercise B before we go back and reincorporate the re-strike of the 5th finger. Let's look at exercise B. We can do the same thing in B. Now, the way this actually sounds would be like this, right? Let's do the same thing. 5 is going to stay depressed on the key. Then we play through 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2. And each time, even as I'm going faster, I'm still working on making sure this rotation toward 5 after each strike of the finger is very large, because I want to make sure that we're incorporating this feeling of going back and forth. Yes? We can do the same thing with the right hand. If we quickly look at exercise C, this is just the mirror image of what we did. We're going to play up to 5, hold 5, strike 3, 2, 1. Yes? So rotate toward 5. Look at how high the thumb is. Rotate toward 5 and then strike. 3, holding 5, 2, rotating back, 1. And if we keep going, nice and slowly, with great amounts of rotation. Yes? Same thing with exercise D. The only difference here is that we've added the 4th finger in. I would suggest actually, before you even go on and add more notes in this exercise, I would suggest doing this, holding 5, using it as an anchor or a pivot point, and feel that rotation, exaggerate that rotation, and do that for a week. Maybe longer, but at least I'd say a week. Then come back and let's work on adding the other notes and releasing 5. So now we can still feel that the 5th finger is a part of this. The 5th finger can still be used. It can still be active, right? The finger itself can still be active to play for us. We don't have to, rotation doesn't eliminate active fingers, but we can reincorporate that. So let's go back to exercise A. And if we are to reincorporate that, now we play to 5. Big rotation right now. 3, 2. Now we see that the rotations back to 5, even after we play 3, are still large. Large rotations, large, large, large. Okay, let's move on to exercise B. So similar thing, now we get to incorporate the 4th finger. And you'll get to see here that there is still rotation that we can use to play between 5 and 4, like this. So 1, 5, 4. It is easier to feel the rotation from 5 into 3 and 2 and 1. That's why we start that way with exercise A. But it's still possible to use rotation to move between 5 and 4. In fact, here's another little exercise that you could work on, just in small bursts. Let's take E and F, which is a part of this first bar of exercise B. 5 on E, 4 on F. Can you practice trilling, slowly, trilling between 5 and 4, using rotation mostly? See how big of a gesture that is? If I just use fingers, nowhere near as large. Right? And if I use rotation, all of a sudden there's more dynamic. It's actually much easier to control. Even if I wanted to make it softer, I can still make it softer. I could do this all day. I could do this all day long, and I would never get tired if I'm using rotation. Yes? So going back to exercise B, you can incorporate that a little bit as you'd like to. That could be a fun thing. But 5, 4, nice large rotations. Even between 5 and 4. So you see why it's important to know that 5 is our anchor. Right? Okay, let's quickly go through a little bit of the right hand. It's going to be exactly the same, but just so you can see what's going on. We play 1 up to 5. Feel that large rotation toward 5. And then back. And we're going to restrike 5 this time. To 5, 3, rotate. Every one of these pitches has a rotation between. The biggest one we think about is the rotation up toward 5. Yes? Okay, and if we look at exercise D, same thing. You can also add that little trill exercise between 5 and 4. Can you execute that with mostly rotation as opposed to fingers only? Big difference in how it looks, right? Let's go back to exercise D. Rotate toward 5. Feel that great rotation. 3, 2, 1. Okay, and if we're doing this the right way, for the sake of these exercises, we are going to feel a whole lot of the wrists going back and forth like this. And of course, like we've done in the past, you can also incorporate these and do them at the same time if you'd like to. Can't promise it's going to sound wonderful, but if we take B and D together, for example, the hands are going to move in contrary motion. We get to feel how both hands rotate toward 5, rotate back toward 1, and 5, and back toward 1, right? We always rotate back toward 1, even if we're using 3 or 2, right? One last note for you about rotation in general. If you put your hands on the keyboard in a neutral, healthy position, yes, it's very easy to rotate toward 5. In fact, if we take our right hand, we could rotate toward 5 all the way across, and we could lay the upper side of our hand, the upper part of our palm, and the opposite side of our palm, we could lay it flat on the keyboard. That's how far we can rotate toward the outside of the hand. Same thing with the left hand. The left hand could rotate completely. We're not going to use that in playing, but this is important. Try to do the same thing, rotating toward the thumb. And if we rotate toward the thumb, you see how much more limited that motion is? And if we try to exaggerate the rotation toward the thumb, watch what happens. The elbow pops out. because we actually can't rotate the wrist much beyond what I call neutral. This neutral position, the wrist does not, and the forearm does not rotate further toward the thumb side. It does a little bit, but it's a fraction of what it can do to the outside. And so most of the time we're talking about using rotation toward the outside of the hand and then back in toward the inside of the hand, because we don't want to see the elbow flying out to try to facilitate some kind of rotation toward the thumb. No, if the elbow flies out, that means we haven't done enough rotation away from the thumb first, right? We have to rotate away from thumb and second finger side of the hand in order to rotate back. We can, in the worst case, we can do a little bit of rotation toward the thumb. You can see that happening here without the elbow moving, but I'm still even preparing that just a little bit. And if I were to go back to neutral, that's about all that can happen, rotation toward the thumb side. So if you catch yourself with the elbow flying in either hand, either arm, we're doing something wrong, right? We're probably not rotating far enough toward fifth finger and then trying to actually cap our rotation or stop our rotation when we reach neutral. When we come back to that neutral place, we don't need any more rotation toward thumb beyond neutral. We don't need to go like that. There won't be ever any need to go like that. We'll always prepare and rotate back. Just going between two notes, right? Watch that again with this exercise, exercise D. See, the elbow does not move. You can see little, I'll call them micro movements, yeah? You can see little movements like this, but it's not flying away like if we were to do this. It's not doing that. Right? Okay. All right, welcome to part 2 where we're going to practice these exercises together. We're going to do them at 6 different tempos. Remember, the point is not to be able to play these extremely fast. The point is to learn this concept of rotation. Just one more note before we get into this practice. For each of these exercises, exercises A and C, I'm going to be playing according to a quarter note on the metronome. So when I'm using 56, for example, that'll be quarter note equals 56, and we'll play. Then I'm not going to change the metronome setting for B and for D, but we're going to actually count eighth note at the same metronome marking. So for A and C, the metronome marking will be for a quarter note. For B and D, the metronome marking will be for an eighth note. And that'll help us actually be able to practice B and D up to some fairly fast speeds before they become extremely challenging. We're going to start with slow tempos and we're going to progressively get faster, and each of them will be bookmarked in the timeline below so you can jump around as you want to. The tempo marks will appear on the screen before the exercise, and I'll give you a count-in so that if you'd like to play with me, we can start together. So here we go. Ready? And 3 and 4. 1. Three, 4, and. 3, 4. Three and 4. Three, 4. Three, 4. Three, 4. Three, 4. Three, 4. And 3, 4. And 3 and 4. And 3, 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 4. And 3 and 4. And 3, 4. And 3, 4. 3, 4. And a 3, 4. And a 3, 4. And 3, 4. Let's do one bonus tempo, because all of those, like I mentioned earlier, all of those, we played the 16th note exercises, B and D. We played them actually according to an 8th note beats per minute instead of a quarter note. So if we do speed this up to a quarter note beat, let's go back to 108 on the metronome. And this will be your most advanced practice. We're just gonna do exercises B and D. This time it's a quarter note equals 108, not 8th note. Here's the left hand for exercise B, and this is what it would sound like. A 1, 2. Okay, and letter D. A 1, 2. All right, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up, a like, and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Just as a reminder, we have gone through a number of the other exercises at the beginning of this Hanon-Faber New Virtuoso Pianist book, so if you haven't seen those, check them out, and I will leave one for you to click on right over here. You've been watching Pianist Academy, where we practice smarter, not harder. I'm Szczepanek, and I will see you in the next video.